Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris, and I'm here with my co-host Spencer
Hello, hello.
from CAOverwatch. Well, we have a great episode for you today. We're going to do an updated power rankings and talk about a little surprise we had this morning, signing Numlock as a player,
Not
not
a
a
coach,
coach.
not a coach or
Not a coach,
player.
a coach. But first, I wanted to take a quick second to recognize some of the stuff that's been happening in our world in the U.S. primarily, but as well as Canada in regards to racism and the killing of George Floyd. What's been happening lately has been absolutely terrible, and we just want to recognize how important it is to stand up against racism and having our voice be heard among everybody else. I really, really like the fact that everybody has been standing together unified against racism in the past and really kind of trying to outshine all the bad things that have happened to certain minority groups. If you guys are interested in playing your part even more and really kind of trying to make a big difference, we're going to put a couple links to places that you can donate to certain causes. One particular cause that I really like that I donated to was the Color of Change. It's a really good program that looks at actually funding grassroots bills and politicians to kind of make changes at the government level, and that's something that I think I wanted my money to go towards. So we're just going to put the link towards that and possibly another couple of other things. And yeah, so stay safe out there, guys, and support your community because our community is our family. With that out of the way, though, Spencer, NumLock got signed as a player today.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I guess on a little bit of a less serious note. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, NumLock was actually broke on this show, was that he was going to be signed to the Toronto Defiant, which we knew. At the time when we had the interview, of course, it was to be as a coach. It became very clear throughout the interview that him being signed as a coach was in quotation marks. It became very clear that him playing was a very real possibility. We made that clear. Again, anyone who commented or reached out to us, we were like, hey, don't, we had a couple people be like, well, he should be playing. I'm like, yeah, he might be. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it says coach now. It was very clear from the interview that him playing was a real possibility. So what does him officially being signed as a player mean for this organization? And I think more importantly, what does it mean for Beast moving forward? I just want to make it very clear off the bat that I don't think that this is the organization giving up on Beast. I think that, and I forget if this was on the record or off the record, and either way, it doesn't matter. It's a positive thing. When we were talking to Adam, it became very clear that he still has a lot of faith in Beast. I believe we were talking at one point, and I like accidentally was like, oh yeah, he could have been really good. And then Adam corrected me and was like, could be good. Is good. Like Adam was very clear about they still have a lot of faith in Beast moving forward with this organization. I don't think that this is a slight on him in any way, shape, or form. I think this was just one of those cases where he was a rookie. He, obviously last year didn't play a lot in contenders or didn't play at all in the Overwatch League. So he was thrust into the situation where he really had to be a veteran presence, like a leader on team and on top of a main shot caller. And I think that was just a lot to throw on a young player. So I think that bringing in NumLock, who has been around the block, right? He was at LA Valiant in season 1, worked his way up through contenders all season 2, and then obviously at the Montreal Valiant this year before getting called up. I think that this is more just taking the pressure off of Beast while simultaneously putting the pressure on Beast. You know what I mean? Like give him a little bit of competition in that main tank role, but also relieve some of the leadership duties that were, I think, unfairly to a degree thrust upon him. So I think that the NumLock overall is a really good signing. I still think the tank line so far has been underwhelming for this team, but I think that it's been less about the individual skill of Nevix and Beast and more about how they sort of have fit together in terms of the puzzle. When you have a younger, maybe a little bit more inexperienced, maybe more nervous main tank and Beast, right? You might want more of a veteran, vocal, confident off-tank player alongside with him, and we've known from like multiple different people have talked about how good Nevix is, but also how like quiet Nevix is. He's not really the type to really like take somebody under his wing and in the game take a lot of these like situations and vocally shot call, right? That's never really been Nevix's MO. So I think that pairing Nevix alongside with NumLock is a really good strategy for this team. NumLock brings a ton of experience, a ton of leadership. And then more importantly, it does give someone, I think, for Beast to actually like be mentored by. Like I think you can really look at NumLocks and break his mentality down and sort of the stuff that he does. And I think that NumLock and Nevix might fit together a little bit better than Beast and Nevix would. And then my final point is I wonder what this is going to be like in terms of splitting the load for the main tanks. Are we going to see, because I don't expect it to be just NumLock and that's all. We'd never see Beast again. Is it going to be NumLock plays Reinhardt Orisa, Beast just focuses on the Monkey? Is it going to be NumLock just focuses on the Reinhardt, and then Beast just focuses on like the Monkey and Orisa? So like Orisa's banned 1 week, we see NumLock in the lineup. If Reinhardt's banned 1 week, we see Beast in the lineup. Those are my final thoughts. Overall, I think it's a positive move for this organization. We finally get a backup into the tank role, which a lot of us have been looking forward to for a while, and I think it's a positive sign moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just want to add on to that. Obviously, the mentorship part of this front tank cohort is extremely important for Beast as a upcoming OWL player who's young. How old is NumLock again? He's what, 26 or something?
He's 28.
He's 28. So I mean, look, I'm not going to put a label on it, but I don't know if he's in this for long term or short term. But regardless, even if it is a short term play for NumLock and he wants to get a couple years out of this, that's great. Then we'll have Beast, like, if not interchangeably playing, being taught and learning from NumLock all on the way, and having Beast really mature out for that time when NumLock possibly retires. If that's the case, though. If that's the case. That's all I wanted to add. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Spencer.
Because I agree, because I think that, NumLock isn't going to be our main tank for the next 5 years, right? Like I mean, he might be. Hey, NumLock, if you want to prove me wrong and be a top-tier main tank for the next 5 years, by all means, go for it. I just don't know if that's really going to be the instance here. I agree that I do think Beast is the player of this organization, like to help mentor and grow Beast as a player, so that next year or the year after he can sort of take over. I mean, that's what I would assume they're doing. Obviously, we don't have any information on that, but that's just like where my head's at. But again, this team clearly needed some changes after the May Melee, after a couple of losses. I think adding Zik is a positive one. I think bringing Surefour in the lineup's another one that we're looking forward to come June. Maybe playing Surefour and Surefour and Logix as a DPS lineup could be really good. And then finally, like, just adding some more stability to that tank line. That tank line has been an issue for this team, I think, all year. Not like a big issue, but it's clearly been a factor. And adding NumLock, I think, just like smooths that over.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I definitely smooths him over, and I think he's going to be an absolutely amazing addition.
Yeah.
But to move on from that, let's get into our power rankings.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we have some interesting power rankings. Just before we start, I think this is it's a crazy time because there's been a lot of, after the gutting of the Vancouver roster, there's been a lot of pickups of some great players from different teams, and we have yet to see them fully integrate into these teams.
Yeah.
So anything can really happen in this 3-year gap. You can have some big changes being made by these people who've been picked up.
Yeah. And
I think it's going to make for a really interesting June Melee.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And then right before we start, for all of you who are complaining about Chris's audio, because I'm sure there's going to be a couple of you out there, he has bought a mic. If you follow us on Twitter, you would know that. You should. I mean, if you don't, you should. But he has the Rode Procaster. Yeah, get it out. Unfortunately, the preamp wasn't available for today's show, so we're just trying to make best of what we have. I know the Apple microphone is not ideal. I promise you, moving forward, the audio quality is going to be improved for this podcast, as well as like you can already see the visuals are improved. We got big things coming, guys. Just give us a bit. Let us get our ducks in a row, and we're going to come forward. But yeah, with that out of the way, I completely agree. A lot of signings have happened, so this is trying to incorporate the ones that we know of right now. I mean, obviously next week, Huxall can go to NYXL and that can change some things, but at this very moment he hasn't. So we don't know where they are. So with that out of the way, let's just jump right into this. So the top tier, the S plus tier, we have number 1 being Shanghai, number 2 being Seoul, number 3 being Seoul. 2 San Francisco, 3 Seoul, 4 Philly. The way that we did this was I did my power rankings, Chris did his, and we just added them up, divided by 2, and then we just did the score that way. So I actually had San Francisco number 1. So I guess, Chris, right off the bat, why did you put Shanghai ahead of San Fran?
I think they have some amazing players with Fleta and Isaac. I'm not going to pronounce that. Isaac or something.
Yeah, Isaac.
So they have some really, really top talent, and they also have which is weird because you can consider most of their team top talent, but then they have a couple of guys that really outshine, and they won the Asia bracket.
Yeah.
It's that simple. They won the Asia bracket, and it was close against Seoul, but Shanghai has really been dominant throughout the whole time. It wasn't like Seoul where they've kind of gone up and down, and then they got really good. They've been consistently dominant, so I'm going to reward them for their consistency, for their win, and for their competent roster.
Yeah, so for me, it was sort of, I think that once San Francisco gets Twilight in the lineup, you're going to see some things. Like, I think Twilight's such a good player, and that's no knock against Violet, because obviously Violet's extremely talented. I just feel like the Shock are one of those teams that in the regular season, maybe they dog it a little bit here and there, right? Like, they have their moments, they don't have their moments, but when push comes to shove, I just can't bet against the Shock, man. We saw it again. Like, there's a lot of people who are predicting an upset, myself included, of the San Francisco Shock in this May Melee, right? Because they look rough against the Toronto Defiant. They've shown weaknesses in the past. And then, of course, right, come the May Melee, push come to shove, they power through, they get the victory. And they didn't make it look easy. I mean, Florida put up a fight, but there was never a real moment where I was like, man, San Francisco's going to lose this. They sort of did, like, walk through the competition up until Florida. And then they made it pretty good from there. But so speaking of Florida, I mean, we have Florida down at the tier below at number 7. A lot of you might be surprised. Well, how do you have Philadelphia ahead of Florida? Florida just beat Philly in the May Melee. I don't know if you want to justify this, Chris, but I certainly can. Just at the end of the day, I think that the roster on Philadelphia is just too stacked. And once they figure out their DPS rotation, once they figure out their tank lineup, I just think they're just a better team overall. I think that Florida kind of hit gold in the sense that they could like run a very unique comp that is very tailored to their style in terms of the Tracer and catch some teams off guard. I think with the recent like Hanzo buffs, for instance, I think if it was a different meta or more teams were used to their style, Florida wouldn't have done as well as they did. So I don't expect them to see similar results in the June Melee or moving forward. Like, I actually had Florida lower than this. It was Chris who put them higher. And I just think Philly's just really good on paper.
Yeah, I think Philly's better purely because of, once again, I like to reward consistency, because consistency in a time that before the May Melee was hero pools is quite important. So they've simply, for me, been more consistent, and they have, once again, a roster that is comparable to Florida Mayhems as well, if not better. With Carpe, Poco, Funny Astro, a bunch of great players.
A lot of great players. Sato. That's what I'm saying. You could list like 9 players in the Philadelphia Fusion. You could be like, man, all of those players are like some of the best in the league. Yeah.
And it really isn't, the thing about them is like it's not like role specific players. They have good players across all roles, which is very important. If we want to look at Shanghai, which is great, but their standout players are in DPS and
support. For
me, at least, in DPS and support. But
I like Void, but I agree their main tank has looked good. Obviously, they've won, but I think that is a weakness for that team. But let's go down to 8. Oh no, let's actually keep going to S tier because these two teams are interesting. The Spark and the Paris Eternal. So I had two of these teams a little bit higher than the S teams. I think the biggest thing for me was that the Spark, I know they looked a little bit rough in the tournament, but I think that once Architect gets fully integrated in that lineup, they're going to be a really good team. But more interestingly, the Paris Eternal, I personally had them in that 5 spot. I think the Paris Eternal are going to be incredible once Sparkle comes to the lineup. Chris, why did you put them a little bit lower?
Well, the reason why I put them lower is because for me, Sparkle could be great, but it takes a while to develop team chemistry. Like some of these people spent a month in, like Toronto Defiant, for example, when they were developing team chemistry before Season 3, they spent a month in Korea just training, just scrimming.
Yeah.
These people have 3 weeks to try and develop similar team chemistry. So I think that for me, that's more of an unknown. That's something that is making me hesitate on moving them higher. So that's kind of why.
Yeah, and I kind of get that. Although I do think that Sparko's been scrimming with the team. Like, I don't think he just randomly started now. Like, obviously, this team knows that Sparko's going to be a big part of it moving forward. I think it was actually when we were talking to... It doesn't matter. I forget who we were talking to. I think that Paris has previously scrimmed with Sparkle in the lineup. I think that's the thing. Either way, I'm very excited to see Sparkle play. I think it's too bad XE is injured currently, because I think XE and Sparkle on that team would be phenomenal. And Fielder looks incredible, and then obviously Hanbin's been incredibly impressive throughout the year. So personally, I think that they might take NA by storm and really push San Francisco and Philadelphia to the brink. But we'll see. So now moving down to the A tier, we have NYXL, then Atlanta, LA Gladiators, LA Valiant, and the Dallas Fuel. So the biggest takeaways from me here is I think, Chris, you had Atlanta a little bit higher than I did, and I had Dallas a lot higher than you did. Just sort of give me your breakdown as to why you would put Atlanta ahead of a team like Dallas Fuel, for instance.
Well, I think with likes Baby Bay, and I think Gator,
Hawk, Urster, Edison, Dogman, Massa.
Gator, for me specifically, Gator and Baby Bay. I do like that duo a lot more than I like certain players on. No, sorry, I mean those two people, not duo. I like those two people more than the other individuals like Note on the Dallas Fuel. And for me, it's like I said, it's going to come back to consistency over and over with the teams like these teams in the middle. I will admit that Atlanta Reign is kind of on a downward trend.
Yeah.
Comparatively. But the fact that they were high on the stonks early on the season shows to me that they can perform at that level. Mm-hmm. For me, Dallas Fuel hasn't gotten to that level yet. So they haven't proven to me that they can perform at that level, which is why I still consider Reign higher.
Yeah. So for me, it's sort of just, I think the Atlanta Reign have been going on a downhill trend over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, they smacked the Toronto Defiant, so that is what it is. But I think part of it is just the fact that we haven't seen Urster, and I think that if this team was all of a sudden fielding Urster, my opinions would change because he's such a talented player. But this team, for some reason, has been consistently fielding Edison and Baby Bay, and I think Gator and Hawk have actually been a little bit disappointing. I know you're a big fan of them, but I think that in relation to the league, I've actually been a little bit underwhelmed. And that's one of the reasons why I think we saw FRD play for a couple weeks over Hawk is just their tank line hasn't been up to, I think, what a lot of people were hoping it would be. And at the end of the day, man, Dallas's DPS is so explosive and so stacked. Like, Decay is the player everybody thought he was. He just wasn't the Zarya everybody thought he was, right? Man, his DPS is so incredible. He can, like, single-handedly carry games and win team fights for you. And I think that Notes actually impressed me this year. I was a little worried that he was just going to be a Diva one-trick, but his Sigmas looked a lot better recently. Gomzu, we know, is a really good main tank. The support line needs some work, even though I love Crimzo. He's Canadian. Shout out to Crimzo. I'll always support the Canadians. But I think their DPS lineup is just so good. It's so good, and it can change so many team fights in so many games that I can't put them any lower. I think they should be higher because I think that this team can just continually improve and really pop off, because I think that might be one of the, if not the best, I won't say the best, but one of the best DPS lineups in the league. And then my last closing thought is just with the Gladiators. The Gladiators, I think, are one of the hardest teams to read in the Overwatch League right now because on one hand, I think on paper they're an incredibly good roster, and I want to put them as like a top 5, top 6 team, which I've said in the past. But then on the other hand, they lose to the Boston Uprising, so it's really difficult. Like, this is a team that if they could get like a Hawksall, or if Atlanta were to trade Urster for them for some reason, like, this team I think would legitimately be in that S tier, if not higher. Like, I have so much faith in that tank line and that support line, and even Birdwing's impressed me. I think it just comes down to a little bit coaching, and obviously Mira Jaru have been a little bit disappointing this year, but that's my last sort of thoughts on that A tier.
Let's go
to B tier.
Let's move. Yeah, let's go to B tier. Let's make this one. What's one team in here that you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, for me, the Toronto Defiant, right? Like, that's sort of our podcast here that we got going on.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about in the C tier.
No, let's go. We might as well do B tier because, like, we're already there, right? So we had the London Spitfire, then the Chengdu Hunters, Houston Outlaws, and Toronto Defiant. I think the most interesting teams here, personally, are London, and then for us, selfishly, Toronto. Like, you could probably put Houston there. Hunters are going to be what the Hunters are. They're going to beat some teams on some hero pools because they're not prepared, and then they're going to lose to a lot of other teams, a lot of other hero pools because they are prepared. Like, I think the Hunters are not going to ever push above B. They're there for the upset potential. London, you're pretty high on Chris, so I'm going to let you defend London here.
Oh man, this was me purely going off of. This is me more just looking back at the Melee. Yeah. They had a very, very cutting game against Shanghai Dragons. It was really one-off, going back and forth the whole time. after kind of like looking at the replays and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
they looked very interesting and had a lot of potential in that sense. Also, once again, I just really rate the Asian bracket higher than I do for the NA bracket. So for me, like if we were to look at two equivalents from both brackets, like London and maybe Gladiators, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would just naturally rate London higher because they are from the Asian bracket.
No, and they got some really good talent. They got Glister and they got Pinar, and they have some really good players on that team. Shui is a really good DPS player, so I definitely see it. It's London's one of those hard teams to get a read on because you just only see them lose, but they're also playing really good teams in the Asian bracket, like you'd said, right? Like it's not like they're losing to the Boston Uprising or the Washington Justice. I don't think that would be the case.
I think they need to find their identity right now. They're kind of like nobody. It's hard to pin down kind of what their play style is like. You know, like who their top. They have some like good players, but who their top tier players are. I think once they find their identity, they're going to be that question mark that's on right now is possibly going to go away.
Yeah. So for the final thing, I just want to say a quick thing about Houston because Houston was one of those teams that when they could run dive, they were really good, and then when they didn't have to run dive, they like weren't very good. Houston's one of those teams I think is the most like hero pool dependent team in this entire league. Like the fact that they ran hydration on main tank during the main melee like blows my mind. Like the fact that Muma got benched for hydration, who's a flex DPS player or like a Sigma player, right? Like is like kind of insane. So obviously I think hydration is really talented. If hydration can become a really good main tank, like this team becomes a lot more interesting. I think they're just going to be very volatile. And then I mean they played Dallas pretty close, because I think they do have a lot of good talent on this team, but I just can't put them any higher because I think they're just so inconsistent in terms of the hero pools. So a little bit of a longer rant here with the Toronto Defiant, Chris. I had them a little bit higher than you. You had them at number 19.
So I had them at 19.
I convinced you to bring them up, mostly because we already talked about NumLock. We don't have to go into that anymore. After talking to Adam from Overactive Media, who owns the Toronto Defiant, Overactive Media owns the Toronto Defiant. Adam co-owns Overactive Media. A co-founder. I think that there's a lot of bright spots as an organization moving forward. I think this is a team that, yes, we've lost kind of a lot, but we've also brought a lot of teams close. Like to think that we have the LA Valiant as high as we do and the Gladiators in the A tier, and I think that Toronto should have beat both of those teams. They were very close games. I think NumLock's going to improve them. I think more time with Cruz is going to improve them. I think playing Surefour and Logix in the lineup at the same time is going to improve them. And I love Kariv. And if NumLock isn't just an improvement over Beast, because that's just a pure player v player. Like let's just say for argument's sake that NumLock, which I'm not even sure is true, but let's just say he is a better main tank than Beast is. But if he's a better main tank than Beast is, but he also is like more decisive and a better shot caller, and that allows Nevix to like pop off more, like you kind of get that snowball effect, right? Where like now that his shot calling, he might not be a better mechanical player, but his shot calling is better, and that just allows everybody to play in their positions more. And then you have a guy like Cruz in the back end who can really take that role as well. I think that this team actually could snowball it, and we can finally get them over the hump, because LA Valiant, incredibly close game we lost. San Francisco Shock, incredibly close game. And we get booped and we lose. Same with the Gladiators. Like if NumLock and more Cruz can be the difference maker between the two, I think this team can actually be pretty good, relatively speaking.
Yeah. So I guess my opinion on why, for me, Toronto is number 19 is gonna make people mad, which is okay. But I'm here to justify it. I understand what you're saying. Like when we talk to Adam, it's very reassuring what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, yes, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
At the same time, and I'm really hoping that things are changing. I am wholly a pessimistic view, but don't get me wrong. The last thing I want for them is to actually be in 19th place. But the thing is that like we kind of had the uplifting story when we talked to both Jay and Broy, and like nothing really happened. So I mean, when I'm like thinking about this team, I'm trying to look not more at like what people are saying right now, because it hasn't materialized to a heck of a lot in the past. It's what has our past looked like and what has other teams looked like. For me right now, yes, we had some close games, but at the same time, we consistently have close games and we're losing. I'm just going to call it losing. We lost. We're losing.
Yeah.
And when I look at the other teams ahead of us, other teams that I put ahead of Toronto Defiant, like Justice, like Boston, like Houston, I put Houston ahead because they've beaten us. They've just consistently beaten us. I put Boston ahead because they've beaten a good team. They beat gladiators. Like we have not been a good team yet.
That's your best point. I think that's your best point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. I put just ahead of us because they're, and once again, I harp at this point every time, it's consistency and predictability. Is I think that regardless of our good pickups, which I think have the potential to be good pickups, the pickups that they had in Jonu and who's the other one?
Stitch.
I forgot the other Stitch. They're more reliable. They have real true owl experience. They were part of, they're part of the Vancouver Titans, part of a great team. So I think that the potential for them to be better and the likelihood of them being more impactful than our pickups are bigger because they are more reliable in that sense. Yeah. So for me, those are kind of some of the reasons why they've been put ahead. And right now, I want to see wins on the board.
Yeah,
and then I'll put them higher.
Yeah, I think the best point is that Boston beat you're right. Our 4 wins are Boston twice before Punk, Justice before any of the Vancouver players joined, and then the Paris Eternal when they didn't have Hanbin or Sparkle in the lineup. So I do agree that it's. I think the losses have been really close with the Defiant, but the wins aren't exactly inspiring. Now moving on to the final one, the bottom of the basement here, which you actually had Defiant, but I was able to convince you to bump them up. Boston, then Justice, then Vancouver. I don't have too much to say. I think Boston has looked pretty good since Punk came in the lineup, and I mean, if Punk can somehow revitalize this franchise, like by all means, I'm interested. I still think they need another DPS player. Colorex and Jerry are good, but they don't. I think they don't fill the entire hero pool that's necessary. Colorex on the May just isn't really ideal.
It's weird.
Yeah, I do think they need another flex DPS player. They finally got more main tanks, which should be interesting. I think Punk's looked incredible, and obviously Young Mung is really good, and Halo I think has been a little bit underwhelming. But regardless of the fact, maybe they pick another main support. Who knows? The playoffs for contenders are happening, which is exciting. The Washington Justice, I have to see what Stitch and Johnny like before I even remotely put them higher. This is like one of the worst teams in the league. I think the Vancouver Titans could still beat them, even with Johnny and Stitch. Let me see what they're capable of. With some scrim time and maybe like less pinks. I saw a tweet that I think it was Stitch or John who had said like, see you soon. I'm not sure if he's coming to North America. He might be. That might help them out. So until I see it, I'll believe it when I see it. And then the Vancouver Titans are also a little bit interesting because obviously they almost beat the Toronto Defiant, right? They took us to the brink. They 5-game match, and if it wasn't for Kareev absolutely popping off, who knows what would have happened. Shredlock, who I've been a huge fan of from the Montreal Valiant, has looked absolutely incredible for this organization. So maybe they finally found their missing piece and they'll be able to put some wins together. But at this point in time, I gotta put them 20. Yeah,
we got to do that. Those are some good points you definitely brought up for those areas. It's not going to change how I think about them, but
yeah.
That's why we have 2 people on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we end things here, do you have any closing thoughts, Spencer? Anything you want to say?
One thing I just realized right now is that the logo on the top left is actually our new logo. It's not the other one. I know because I had the old overlay on and I switched it because Bocce Riley, shout out to Bocce Riley, just sent me another one, and I didn't realize until this podcast had started that it's actually the new logo. So I don't know if we're going to tweet about it before this uploads. We probably will realistically, but in case we don't, you guys got the scoop. We're doing a little bit of an overhaul, like I said, with the graphics, the logo, a bit of a rebranding, as well as starting out Toronto Ultra podcast, which will be in the description below, which we also will be doing right after this. So that's some of my sort of final thoughts is a new logo. Chris is about to get a new mic. We got a new podcast coming out. Big things for the future. And hopefully, knock on wood, a really exciting guest coming up to you next week, which I really hope confirms. If it is, we'll again follow us on Twitter and you'll be the first to know.
Yeah, just add to that. We really got to get y'all listening. We've kind of willy-nilly for the past little while, and I'm glad we're all kind of getting our ducks in a row right now, making the release schedule a little more consistent, making our clean cut look a little more consistent, and audio a little more consistent.
Yeah.
And hopefully video. So I'm happy about that, and I hope you guys like that. You guys like what we put out.
We're trying to put the best content for you guys moving forward. But with that out of the way, I mean, again, if you guys enjoyed it, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like all those sort of things. Thank you so much for watching. The support over the past couple of weeks have been absolutely incredible. We've had some of our most successful content to date, and I think that a big reason is you guys in the community. So thank you so much, and as always, enjoy.